Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside Indiana Overtime. I'm Alex McCarthy with Inside Indiana, of course. Robby Howard of the IDS for the next two or 3 weeks, and then he's going to
exactly 2 weeks.
Yeah, and then he's going to be Robby Howard of Inside Indiana, so it'll be easier. But we're here at Memorial Stadium, as you can see, at the scene of Indiana's final game, final win of the 2013 season. Indiana beats Purdue 56-36, as the scoreboard still says, more than 2 hours after the game finishes. Indiana gets the bucket back, beats Purdue for the first time in the Kevin Wilson era, first time since 2010. And this one was never really close. Indiana won the opening coin toss, chose to receive, which turned out to be a great decision. They score. They get a stop, they score again, they're immediately up 14-0, and just kind of, not necessarily cruise from there, but for at least the first 3 quarters, they really dominated the game. Obviously, Purdue outscored Indiana 20-7 in the final quarter, as Danny Etling has the best game of his career, the best half of his career, really. But across the field from him, Tre Roberson made Danny Etling's day seem pedestrian. Roberson ties the IU single game record for touchdown passes in a game with 6, which is incredible. He's 25 for 37, 273 yards through the air, and then a career high 150 yards 154 yards running the ball. He did it all tonight, and we didn't see Nate Sudfeld except for a couple plays when I think the times he came in were when Roberson lost his shoe on a play, and then when Roberson lost his helmet on a play where Roberson physically could not be on the field, really, were the times that Nate Sudfeld came in. Even Cam Kaufman got a series. So it was just kind of a bizarre, I think we'll start there, it's just kind of a bizarre situation. I mean, what did you think of I guess, how they used their quarterbacks, or how they, I guess, didn't use one of their quarterbacks?
Well, it was interesting to see Tre sort of play the whole game. I think a lot of times this year we've seen one quarterback start, and then another guy comes in, and really Cam Kaufman came in just sort of in garbage time, perhaps maybe his final time in an IU jersey. Of course, earlier this week he Instagrammed a picture saying, really going to miss this guy, talking about Nate Sudfeld, so it was sort of, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
And so it was interesting to see Kevin Wilson sort of stick with Tre the whole time. Of course, he was riding a hot hand, and I think that was the plan originally coming into the season, was you start out with one guy, and if he's doing really well, why change? And I think that was actually a good move. A lot of people might say that, why didn't you go to Nate Sudfeld? I say, why would you get off of Tre Roberson? Because Tre played a phenomenal game, by far his best game that he's played at IU, I think, statistically, and obviously on the field performance. You look at it, they finished with a 20-point victory, and honestly, it could have been bigger than that, really. If the defense, some things go differently. It probably should have been more than a 20-point victory. Certainly felt like the margin of victory was a little bigger than 20 points, but Tre played a heck of a game, and so I don't see a reason why you really would even need to go to Nate Sudfeld really for an extended period of time. Tre had the perfect balance working tonight. A lot of times this season, we've seen him come in and he tries to run too much and neglects the pass, or sometimes the passing just isn't really working for him. Tonight he had both things working, and when he did get those holes to run through, he was off, he was through them.
Yeah, he was, and he made a lot of plays that were
Tre plays.
Where he just kind of ran around, saw something, made something happen. I mean, there was a fourth down conversion a couple games ago, I think against Illinois, where it was kind of a broken play, and he kind of had to run around and get it, which kind of sealed the game for them. And he made a bunch of those plays tonight, especially on third down. I mean, Indiana was 16 of 18 on third down, which is insane, which is something we haven't seen. It's not like they've been a bad third down team this year, but 16 of 18 is unreal.
It's usually what other teams do to them.
That's true. That's very true. It was kind of the reverse thing there. And Roberson was able to find, especially, it seemed like a lot of times there were senior guys open. It seemed like Kofi Hughes bailed him out a couple times on third down. Even Deweese Wilson had 3 catches, and he hasn't really been, I think he only had 12 catches before today for the season. But Shane Wynn had a huge game. Cody Latimer, as expected, goes over 100 yards again, has a really, really nice touchdown catch where he took, where Roberson threw a pass basically at the goal line by the sideline, and Latimer reached in front of a Purdue defender, took the ball away and spun and somehow stayed in bounds for the whole time and peeked his hand into the end zone. So he had a great play. Kofi Hughes made a great catch that was in a similar part of the field on the other side, where he was able to sneak his foot in bounds and make a catch. But Shane Wynn was the star of the wide receiving corps today. He actually started the game in the backfield, both because Tevin Coleman dressed today. Tevin Coleman, who hasn't played in a couple games, with an ankle sprain, but Coleman ended up not playing at all. And so in the backfield to start the game was Roberson at quarterback, and then Stephen Houston and Shane Wynn as the halfback. And Wynn actually got the first carry of the game, which was kind of weird to see, but it's kind of something. Yeah, it's something that Indiana's tried to do increasingly in the past couple of years, is figure out ways to get Shane Wynn to get the ball in one of your best players and most explosive players' hands. And Shane Wynn played really, really well. Had 3 touchdown catches. In addition to a couple carries that, were not really important to the game, but just kind of showing his versatility. But the run game in general, Wynn was the only IU player to get a carry and not run for 100 yards today. Tre Roberson, obviously, we said ran for over 150. Stephen Houston had 120, and then D'Angelo Roberts, late in the game especially, had a lot of success. He had a big run right at, I think, the last play of the game. He had a really big run to push him over 100 yards.
Is that the quietest 100-yard
rusher? Yeah. No kidding.
Look out, D'Angelo also went for 100. Though.
Yeah.
Very, very quietly going for 100 yards.
It was. And it's something we've seen this year where when the run game works, the passing game works, and everything. When the run game works, Indiana has an incredibly larger chance of winning. Just, from what we've seen this year, Robby, just how important is that to get, whether it's Tevin Coleman, Stephen Houston, any of those guys going, how important have you seen this run game become for Indiana?
Well, everyone knows how lethal IU is through the air with, you just name off the receivers, Cody Latimer, Kofi Hughes, Ted Bolser, Shane Wynn, the list goes on. So everyone knows how dangerous IU is through the air. When you add the threat on the ground and you really make IU a dual threat team, both through the air and on the ground, then it's almost impossible to stop them. But it was also interesting to hear Kevin Wilson say today, he said, sort of like in a basketball game when your sharpshooters hit their first couple threes, when IU's receivers make a couple plays to start the game, he said everyone on the team, not just the offense, but everyone sort of feels like, all right, today's our day. We're going to have a good game because our receivers are making plays. And, it was both sides of the ball. It was through the air and through the ground, I should say. Everyone's making plays today on the offense, and just a really good day. The total yards, almost 700 yards of total offense. The offense was clicking today.
Right, and historically so. They scored 56 points, which is the most ever against Purdue. And they passed the total at home fairly early on, I think, the record against Purdue in Memorial Stadium fairly early on, and then obviously finished with 56 points. I think the previous record was 52. And we've touched on this a little bit. A couple of the guys you named off, between Kofi Hughes, Ted Bolser, a couple of those guys, and we talked about Stephen Houston. The seniors really showed up tonight. Indiana gets that first down on their first drive, but then on Stephen Houston's first touch of the game, he takes it outside,
53
beats
yards.
one guy, and takes it 53 yards for a touchdown to kind of set the tone for the game. Hughes makes a couple of really big catches. Bolser gets a touchdown, even though he only had 3 catches for 16 yards. We talked kind of extensively with the seniors after the game. And I know you're a big fan of Kofi Hughes, just from interviews, etc. And actually, this is Robby Howard's senior day too.
Yes.
This is his last IU game as a student here, which is.
It's your last game as a student.
As a student, yeah, that's true. It's a little bit different because I'll be around maybe a little bit longer, but I guess it's kind of different maybe for us who have been here these 4 years with these guys. Kofi Hughes was a freshman when we were a freshman. And
I was in finite class with Kofi freshman year. M1, what was it, M113 or whatever?
One of those nightmare classes.
Yeah. So I think we, at least personally, we identify with them a little bit. We're part of their class.
Yeah. And
we are all one IU senior class of 2014, 2013. December 2013.
Right.
For you.
That's true. No, it's been great to kind of see these guys develop. I mean, Steven Houston, even though he hasn't been here, the full 4 years, he was a junior college transfer. But it's, at first he was just kind of this bruising back who you put in maybe in short yardage situations, and he was just kind of the new guy, basically, who was surprisingly good. Now he's one of the team's vocal guys, one of the leaders, and a guy who, in the past couple of years, we've seen him not only be kind of, I use more physical back, but he can also, I mean, we saw him today on that 53-yard run. He can leave people in his dust. Absolutely. I mean, we've seen him develop. We've seen Kofi Hughes develop from, and it's been kind of hard for Hughes, in his first couple of years, he was in the shadow of guys like Tannen Doss and Terrence Turner and DeMarlo Belcher. And now he's
the guy.
He's the guy who makes insane catches in the end zone. Or he's the guy who bails out Tre Roberson or Nate Sudfeld when they're scrambling around and have no one else to throw to. Ted Bolzer he's Ted Bolzer.
Touchdown Teddy.
Yeah, I mean he has a nose for the end zone. He set the IU record for receptions for a tight end tonight, which it was kind of funny. He said after the game that coaches were, as the game was going along, coaches were aware of it maybe a little bit more than he was, and they were kind of designing their play calls around throwing him the ball, and he eventually got it, and with that late touchdown. And Mitch Ewald. I mean, how could we forget about Mitch Ewald?
Probably the Hoosier who has the biggest NFL prospects.
Yeah,
honestly.
Yeah, that's true. And even though and he'll have to kind of prove that at the combine because he didn't, or at IU's pro day, just because he didn't really have that many opportunities.
He didn't have many 50-yard. Well, he did have a 50-yarder.
Yeah, that's true.
His only 50-yarder of his career.
Yeah, but it's just kind of weird that Mitch Ewald didn't really get a chance to prove himself much this year. He missed those 2 field goals last week, but that was in just ridiculous, terrible weather. So there's some huge holes to fill for IU, obviously, especially at that place kicking position. I don't really have any idea what they're going to do there.
Eric Toth?
But maybe that would be. Who knows? Maybe they'll kick even fewer field goals next year without him. But tons to look forward to still, because it's still a very young team. The offensive line has no seniors. None of the quarterbacks are graduating.
Tevin Coleman will be
back. I mean, Robby.
Defensive back.
Right. What do you kind of see? You're not going to be here, I guess, next year. But sorry to bring that up. But what do you see? I guess in this team's future. What do you see next year from them based on the development in the past 4 years?
I think really this is pretty obvious to most people. I think if IU manages to develop a solid defense, sky's the limit for this team. I mean, the offense is there. That firepower is going to stay there. Cody Latimer is going to come back. Shane Wynn is going to come back. In all likelihood,
I would assume
a few assumptions there, but I'm going to assume they're going to come back. And obviously, the quarterbacks, running backs, we talked about all of that. And so you look at the defensive side of the ball. Darius Latham, David Kenny, they've now played in their first year. Rashard Fant didn't play at all this year. I actually think redshirted. Yeah, and so
Antonio Allen.
Yeah, Antonio Allen will be back. And so there's a lot of guys who sort of got their feet wet. This was a big defensive class, but this was sort of supposed to be the class to turn IU's defense around. That did not happen.
No.
But they were only freshmen. And I think there's a lot to be said for making the transition from high school football to college football, especially Big Ten football. There's a big difference there. And so I think that now all those guys have had a year to see what college life is like, what college football is like. I think that maybe next year they make a big jump and a lot of recruits, and of course you know all about all of them.
Right, we'll have you covered there, of course.
Of course, and so when you look at adding all of those pieces together, I feel like people say this every year, but maybe next year is the year,
Yeah.
Maybe next year is the year that IU goes to a bowl game. It was expected that IU would go to a bowl game this year. Obviously, that did not happen, and so it'll be interesting to see, does the program take the next step next year? I think that it really will be expected next year that happens because the team has improved every year under Kevin Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the wins, they have improved every year, and so if they improve next year, that'll mean a sixth win.
That's true.
Which would mean a bowl game. So.
Yeah, it's true, and we'll see what they do to kind of change that. work with that defense. The question that's come up the past 4 or 5 weeks is whether there's going to be a coaching change, and we'll see what happens there. I would not necessarily, bet on it happening, but I think there's probably a fairly good chance that there are some shakeups there. But we'll see here in the next few days or a few weeks whether there's something there. But for now, there's really just speculation. Looking forward to signing day in February and then to spring practice. Those are really the next 2 things for IU. That wasn't really the plan for them. Obviously they wanted to finish this regular season and then have a game later on in December, but that's not going to happen. But we'll see how this team gels, how this team kind of changes. But for now, it's basketball season. We'll be out at Assembly Hall. Well, actually, it'll be a while because they're playing at Syracuse.
December 10th?
Yeah, it's a little ways. So there are a couple weeks here where actually you won't get an overtime for a while. I don't know what you're going to watch. I don't know why you're going to be on YouTube if not for overtime. But we'll end it there. We've already gone 16 minutes here on kind of the season wrap-up for football. So thanks again for watching all season long, and thanks again if you've made it this far for watching this particular episode. For Robby Howard of the IDS and about to be Robby Howard of Inside Indiana, I'm Alex McCarthy of Inside Indiana, and you enjoy the rest of your weekend.